كهرو وحياة جيد مالس كيالو أنت هذا كنال كان كوكريس جيق يا جيدا ونكيال حولها أي حاب كداقان ما وحبورن ماهن وحيرا كابورنا ماشي وجود حق سكتة وحان أنت أفكارنا نقش على شاد عن جارين أكله يا كابورنت لما سنة ولا كنال كان ماشي كو حلقة سوق يا مطورك كنال كان درب قاضيين مركا نول بنا إخدا أفرن ونول ببيرتيس أسكو عبايا markii ay iridaan oo kanaalka ay ka dagaan nin walba beertiisan hadana sidoo kale jid oo maraya jira waa walaalo wal dhashan waxna way taqabsanay beertan waxaan ugu ogolaanay hadaba hay'adaha wax siinahay Soomaa inay ka kaaftoomaan oo beertu waxay ka soo saartaan ay awood ku yeeshaan dad kale ay caawiyaan
هديب أنا حالي معها أريد ساعد لي حالي نورشي وزارة ساقة ذاي المها كبيرة ذاي كستي روحي أدي سيداي كارخ قادين كلا كالمي سيداي وهي نورولي والألق والكست ولي أنها دق الفروق موايا إدي إذا أن رجي هو إلهي إذا موب إدي إذا أن رجي أني أو جو ولي
sideedoo mashruucyada dhan hay'adaha ay fuliyaan haasadeedu isku filnaansho weyn iyo isku tiirsanaansho weyn iyo isfahan weyn ee labada bulsho ka dhaxeeya ayaa jira aniga ka gudoomiyahan wallahi oo aniga hadda malkaadiida mustaqbalkeeda waxaan ugu riyoonayaa madii aad u wanaagsan oo hadda xawliga ay ku socota waa xawli mustaqbalkeed marka aan ku riyoodo
First one who is going to join university from a family. There are a lot of teachers who I will not forget that assisted us to reach this great victory. I wanted to learn management to solve the continuing problem in my country, and my wish is to be the first female president for Somalia. If I became the president of Somalia, I will open more schools for the society. That's my wish and my dream, and I will.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage actor and UNHCR high-profile supporter Nomzamo Mbatha and our distinguished panel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nomzamo Mbatha, and I'm going to be this morning's plenary moderator. Now, before we start, do we have any entrepreneurs in the room? You can just lift your hand. Are we gonna go with woohoo? Do we have any CEOs in the room? Woohoo. Any mothers in the room? Any fathers in the room? Any brothers? Any human beings? Awesome. It's good to know that we have a collective community, just like the refugee community. Do we have any refugees in the room? Woohoo! We're going with woohoo today. Now, the plenary's topic this morning is Beyond a Refugee. It explores the private sector and how they can play a pivotal role in helping refugees rebuild the lives that they had before being forced to flee. In Africa, we host the highest number of displaced human beings, 24.2 million people. Hearing these numbers implored me to become an advocate for the UNHCR agency's, UN refugee agency's Luku Luku campaign. People that have been forced to flee because of food insecurity, because of war, because of conflict. However, the Luku Luku campaign aims to change the narrative of the African refugee, and that is to say, these are people that overcome and people that rebuild. Take, for example, 17-year-old Adud Idris that I met in Maban, South Sudan, which happens to be the most remote refugee camp in the world. I met him at his school. And immediately I walked up to him because he was the only blind student in the room. And I asked him what he wanted to become when he was older. And he said he wanted to be an engineer. Now, there's no Braille that's being used in refugee camps, and no Braille machines, no Braille teachers. And so I asked him why he wanted to become an engineer. And he said, because I want to help other disabled young kids to know that anything is possible. And that is the role of the private sector. This plenary will help to discover the opportunities and learn and how to invest in sustainable development, or as I like to say, find ways to do it luku luku. We will learn more about the key roles of the private sector and how they can play in helping refugees build their lives as an investor, as a philanthropist, as an innovative service provider, as an integrator, as a catalyzer. You will also hear examples where national and local authorities, NGOs, civil society, organizations, private sector partners, and other actors who have worked together to ensure a comprehensive response to refugees. Now, at this time, I'd like to introduce the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency's Deputy High Commissioner, Kelly Clements. Kelly joined UNHCR as Deputy High Commissioner on July 6, 2015. She has been closely involved with refugee and displacement issues for the past 28 years. Before joining UNHCR, she served in the US Department of State as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Kelly Clements. Now, Kelly, the main issue that has been discussed is finding collaborative ways of private sector and, of course, the refugee world. How has the UNHCR been able to negate these?
It's great to be on the stage with you, and I have to say that video was completely inspiring. You'll hear from Per right after me, I think, and we were together in that exact location looking at the irrigation schemes. It's exactly the type of thing that UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, with private sector partners are trying to do. You mentioned in your opening what we're facing in terms of the global refugee crisis of today. You know, we're talking about 68.5 million forcibly displaced people on the move, of which 25.4 million are refugees.
Right.
We have to have a complete reboot of the global refugee system. And this is what we're talking about today. It's that reboot. If we are successful this year, and I think we will be, with the strong support, not just of governments, but also of the whole of society, private sector, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, civil society, coming together as part of what we're calling the Global Compact on Refugees. Yesterday at the UN General Assembly, there was strong support for this Global Compact. It is a way to turn the narrative about refugees into something that's much more productive.
Right.
It is a way that turns a 1950s way of providing support to refugees into something much more innovative and current, and puts the power back into the people that we're trying to serve so that they actually own their own agency. So they are providing for themselves, for their families. They're putting their kids in school. They're producing so that they are part of a community that actually gives back. This is something that we can't do by ourselves. Mm-hmm. This is something we absolutely need to have private sector partners, and not just as philanthropists, as wonderful givers, as generous businesses, but as innovators, as investors, as seeing communities and refugees as people that can give back as not a number amongst the 25.4 million, but as individual contributors and economic drivers. This we cannot do alone.
Right.
And so we're completely turning the way that we provide support from something that is, you know, what you would consider in the old days, you know, camp-based support, handouts. This is not what we're doing anymore, and we can't do it. We need solutions to these situations. We need refugees and their hosts, because what's most important about this, and what you saw in the example in Ethiopia, is that it's the host community that's very much involved, along with the refugees that have been amongst them for many, many years.
Of course, one of the other things that the UNHCR aims to do when it comes to the sustainable development with the refugees is restoring the dignity of the refugee. And you mentioned that it's no longer the age of handouts. Now there's the independence of, here's a card, you'll be able to go into the market and, of course, trade with other refugees in the market. I mean, you go to a Kakuma and you just see an economy all on its own.
Exactly. And it's not just the refugee community. The local communities are benefiting as well. So to see this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and what we've tried to do, and there are many private sector partners that we have engaged in this response, in this global response, and we hope more of you will come to the table.
Yeah.
But it's to help us try to find those innovative solutions to make that kind of transaction possible. Really turning things into, for example, digital identification. You know, how do we put, not just here's your refugee card that tells you that you're a refugee and you can go and get a food handout, but you own your own identity. You own your own agency in terms of what it means to be a citizen of the world, whether or not you have an actual document in your hand.
And what about the need for a whole of society approach? I mean, you know, the conversation could also go into the large number of arrivals. How does the UNHCR, I suppose, negate that too?
Well, it's, you know, we have historic records of people on the move today, but we can look at this as an opportunity. It can't be an opportunity if we don't have everyone involved, from the very grassroots community level to places where these governments and local communities have been hosting people for years and decades, to the global level in terms of government engagement, to big transnational corporations that see it in their business interest to be involved. This is what we need in terms of the future.
I love that you lead into that, because one of the biggest funders for this year's TEDx, which is the first time that TEDx went to a refugee camp in Kakuma, Kenya, was H&M. And of course, global manager, of the H&M Foundation, Diana Amini, is with us today, if she can join us. And thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.
Kelly. Hi. Ladies, let's come closer. Now, Diana, this year, TEDx went to a refugee camp for the very first time, and one of the head funders, or partners, I should say, was the H&M Foundation. What was the journey like when H&M Foundation decided to hop on board?
You know, we always earmark money in our donations for communication initiatives, because we think it's so important not just to implement great programs, but to also share what we learn from them and share, you know, research or best practices or other perspectives. So UNHCR came to us and asked, like, could we use some of that budget for the TEDx event? And we were like, that is fantastic, because what I think that we all need is also to reach out to a broader audience than the usual suspects, I mean, that we all are maybe in this room, but also to reach out to a global audience and also to challenge the stereotypes that we often see when it comes to refugees.
Absolutely, but beyond just challenging the stereotypes, H&M Foundation plays a catalyzer in that, of course, imploring other private sector to hop on board.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's really our role. We're a small team of 9 based in Stockholm, in Sweden. We are privately funded by the founders and main owners of H&M, so of course there's a clear link to the company, even though we work like beyond the company sphere. But I think that's the role that we can play. We are fortunate to have one donor, which makes us really flexible. We can try out new innovative ideas. and I think it was just a perfect match with the TEDx.
Yes.
And we, of course, want our partners to collaborate, and that makes, we need to collaborate as well with other donors, with academia, with, the civil society at large, and governments and so on. So that's really our role. The role that we can play is to be the catalyst.
And of course, to be the catalyst, it means that you can't grow tired. So what is H&M Foundation willing to do, obviously going forward, post the involvement with the UNHCR?
Yeah, but I think, equality is one of 4 focus areas that we have. We have focused especially on education. So what we did also to reach out to a broader audience was to, together with H&M, to
Yes.
have this holiday season campaign in store, where we matched each gift card that was sold during a month. We matched it with school supplies for refugee children. This was, of course, also a great opportunity to talk about the refugee issue for customers coming in store. And then going forward, I think it's just so many opportunities that we could see and hear from the Global Compact meeting yesterday, meeting a lot of other donors and partners. We also see so many new, I would say, tech solutions in this field when it comes to family tracing. We support Refunite, for example. We also have a partnership with Missing Children in Europe, supporting unaccompanied children. So there's so much synergies. Sometimes I think we work in silos. So our role going forward, I think, would be to kind of connect those dots and find the synergies between different partners.
Which you've done absolutely excellently. Any lasting words that you have for private sector in terms of going into partnerships with the UNHCR?
No, but I think, as Kelly said, it's nothing that you do for charity. It's really a win-win situation, and I also think it has to do with the values you have as a company or as a philanthropic arm to that. I mean, H&M has 170,000 employees around the world. Of course, it means a lot internally as well to show what values you have. Either it's about doing a pride collection, or it's about supporting the TEDx like we did as a foundation. So it's so important both internally and really a win-win for everyone.
Of course, using social activism as well as a catalyst.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Thank you. When philanthropic giving is both visionary and strategic, it can be transformative. We're going to look at an example with IKEA Foundation's $100 million grant focused on sustainable development in Ethiopia. Let's take a look at the video. We don't have the video. But what we do have is the CEO of IKEA Foundation, Per Heggenes, ladies and gentlemen.
We have a video. We just ran it.
We're gonna play the video.
No, we played the video already in the break.
We want more. Tell us about the video that everybody saw in the beginning and the inspiration behind it, sir.
I'll do that, but I want to say something first.
Please do.
Because what we have to understand is that refugees are people just like you and me. They have a purpose, they want a purpose in life, they have goals in their own life, they have skills, and all they want to do is have a job, feed their family, and avoid being bombed every day. And we have to think about it in that context instead of thinking about refugees as a problem, because refugees are an opportunity. And refugees are assets, and if you allow them to work, if you allow them to provide their skills, their knowledge, they can be assets and contribute positively to the community, whether it's in New York or in a refugee camp in Ethiopia. We should keep that in mind. Now, what we tried to do here, for those who saw the video, was to take a look at how we contribute beyond saving lives. So when we started with UNHCR in 2011 in this very remote rural area in the south of Ethiopia, it was an emergency. Kids were dying because of the famine in Somalia. They walked for days to get to the refugee camp, and some didn't make it. Now, what happens then is, as everything is stabilized, we go into this situation which is protracted, which we see that most refugees today find themselves in a protracted situation. On average, 25 years, the refugees either camp on in rural areas or in urban areas, doesn't really matter. And what we try to do then is say, how can we create a purpose in life for these people? How can we allow them to do something with their skills and their energy and contribute to the community? So that's when we invested in building livelihoods, in providing better education for the children, and in starting to look at how renewable energy, clean energy, can help also productively to improve the lives of these refugees. Now, as Kelly was talking about, it's not about refugees, it's about the community. It's about the community development. It's really about the nexus between development and humanitarian work. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we're doing development work together with UNHCR in order to create a solid community that can work together and live in harmony. Because it's a fact that when you have 200,000 refugees descending on a small area, it's going to have an impact on the local community. But, as Kelly also said, the local community is often equally poor. And politically, it becomes much more acceptable for those who run the country if they can see that with the international resources, there will be resources deployed against the host community as well as the refugees. And as you saw from the video, if you did see the video, these people live in harmony. They speak the same language, they share the same culture, and they farm the same land, and they run the same market stalls.
A round of applause for that, please. What I appreciate in that narrative is that there's the individual look at it, beyond, which is why we're here, beyond a refugee. What are some of the challenges that IKEA Foundation has kind of faced and overcome in the relationship?
In general or in this product?
I'd say in general.
Okay, let me talk about challenges in general. Of course, it's always challenges to do something new, something that hasn't been done before. It's individual challenges, political challenges, power challenges, and you have to be very patient and work with the people. And I think the key driver is to really understand where everyone is coming from, as you do in any walks of life, and you try to understand people and their needs and their priorities, both when it comes to the refugees, but also when it comes to the host community and the hosting country, and bringing people together and working through every kind of challenge so that we really understand that we can accommodate everyone and we can create something that's great for everyone. Has been challenging, but if it wasn't challenging, we wouldn't have tried it. Absolutely.
In terms of the gaps that are obviously very clearly there, whether it be in health or education, how has IKEA identified them? Do you go out into the fields more often than not?
Well, I've been to this camp 15 times.
Wow.
So I do go out in the field. But in general, we rely on partners like UNHCR to really understand the needs and the right way to help refugees create a better life for themselves. So we take one challenge at a time, and we make it work, and then we hopefully create a model that can be applied everywhere else.
What is your vision for the refugee camps around the world, specifically?
Okay, so let's talk about refugee in camps and refugees in urban areas, because a large group of refugees find themselves in urban areas.
Urban areas,
and they're in about 5 different countries that host the majority of the refugees. So the challenge is, well, there are many challenges, and our focus would always be to see how can we ensure that every refugee has the right to work, has the right to feed their family, and has the right ultimately to be integrated in the country they are being hosted, unless they can go home to their old country. But what we see is the protracted situation, and what we're trying to do is make sure these talents are used in a proper way and people get to live a normal life as possible in the situation they find themselves. So investing in job opportunities is absolutely key, and we have seen from a number of different programs we run with UNHCR that when you get those investments in place and people have something positive to do, and kids have the opportunity to get the proper education and families have the opportunity to create the necessary money that they need to live their life and feed their family, well then the conflicts will go away. So that's what we would like to see. Everyone has the right to work. Everyone is seen as an asset as opposed to being a beneficiary or a problem or a crisis, because this is not a crisis.
That's it. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to introduce Fahad al-Sulahiti, who is the CEO of EAC.
You can do this, so my love, keep on running. We gotta get through today.
Morning.
Good morning, Lisa.
How are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm
Thank
good.
you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Now, Fahad, I'd like us to talk about the biggest rewards for scaling privately funded philanthropic projects globally, which is what the EAC does very well.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, especially thanks for our biggest partners, UNHCR, and for our potential partner, hopefully, IKEA and the Jeddah. So thank you very much. Yes, the foundation is been set by Her Highness Sheikh Nomzamo Mbatha in 2012 with very ambitious targets, is to reach 10 million out-of-school children, focus on different barriers. One of the major barriers is refugees. We have poverty and natural disaster. So we started, in 2012, and we said that first we need to challenge ourselves, how to achieve this. And we work with our partners. And the first partner that we start, with at the UNHCR, this was the first agreement. And then today, in April, we secured the commitment for the 10 million out-of-school children in 50 countries with 80 partners around the world. So 1.9, of this out-of-school children that we secured the commitment is for refugees and IDPs. One of the largest is the one that we have with the UNHCR in 12 countries for 1 million out-of-school children. In 12, yeah, it's a huge number.
It's a big number.
It's big numbers, yeah. But thanks for our partnership, with the UNHCR. We leverage with 80 partners for around $1.8 billion to do this. Talking about the scaling is really one of the challenges that we face is the financial scaling up, and how to convince others that education is the heart, to achieve. So there are other components. For example, with the UNHCR today, one of the things that we try to bring multi-sectors together. So we work with food program to give a food for these kids, to convince parents, to let their children
go to school.
Go to the school. And this is one of the things that how we convince others. We don't know where's these children, So it's most marginalized children around the world. There are no lists say this kid is out of school children. So we need to reach them. We do a campaign through parents, bring your kids so we can reach them and we can put them back to schools.
And what are some of the innovative ways potential philanthropists could possibly look at in terms of tackling the situation?
I think one of the things that we keep thinking about, how we could think about innovation, the idea. And one of the things that we recently have talking about, should we design something, for example, in Bangladesh, because the fraud, and the waters all around the countries, we have boat schools. And we have 400 boat schools going all around Bangladesh, And
wow.
So at the same time, the parents going up and try to have something, like innovative ideas, and how can they come work and have a return to the school. For example, one of the other examples that we have today is in Ethiopia, we have schools. Half of the land is a farm where the parents bring their kids and they go to the farm and return 50% going to the schools and 50% going to the family. So we need to think about innovative idea, how to think about convincing the parents, have designed things, how this will work. And I know that IKEA and others are working on this such innovative idea. So that's why we need really bringing lots of people from different sectors to think with us how we should do it. However, we are not stopping on this 10 million. We're going beyond this. Now our new strategy is really to focus on zeroing out of school children in a couple of countries. And for sure, we'll be working with our partner on this. Thank you.
And how long is this vision going to take?
I think,
No pressure.
No, it's not a pressure. I think all of us have a target, the 2030 targets that been set for the SDGs. Yes, we focus on SDG 4, the quality education, but still we believe the synergies, between all the goals, the 17 goals, is very important. I think that the right of education today is give peace to these refugees peoples. We are providing the tools.
Right.
So we need all of us to work together to provide them with these tools.
Now, what I love about what Per said was that it's not a natural disaster. It's not a crisis. It's a person. It's people that have lives, that have potential, people who are overcomers. What are some of the values of the foundation that you absolutely implement in terms of whatever project that you may be going forward with?
I think the value is really for this is, first of all, is we are supporting the development of the countries. We are doing indirect impact of education. For example, unemployment, we created jobs now by having teachers, by people coming and contracting people, to come and to build these schools. So we're investing in GDP of the countries. We're investing in economic of the countries to be growth. If big amount coming to this, countries to invest in education and health and nutrition, this is what the value that we are bringing together. Giving good lives for these children and the parents.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're all inspired and we're all implored to do better and do more.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My next speaker, Robert Hakiza, is a refugee, a co-founder and director of YARID, which stands for Young African Refugees for Integral Development. It is a Ugandan-based NGO. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Hakiza. Robert, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah,
now, please tell us some of the projects that YARID does for anyone in the room that is not very familiar with it.
Okay, thank you so much. YARID, it's a refugee-led organization, so we are based in Kampala, Uganda. I am also at the same time a refugee, as you've heard here, from Congo, and I've been in Uganda for the last 10 years. So YARID, it's an organization that was started by the refugees themselves, and the reason why we started YARID was, as for us refugees who've been living in urban area, so we realized that we are not receiving receiving limited support compared to the support that's given to the refugees in the settlements. So we realized that in the population of refugees in Kampala that is dominated by the young people who don't go to school, they don't have jobs and stuff. So we found it very important so that we can bring them together so that we can start from there to start discussing about the issues that are affecting their life. And that's how we started. So the idea was just very simple at the beginning, just to bring people together so that we can start discussing. And from there, we started identifying the challenges that people are facing and try to come up with the solutions. So right now, YARID, we are in education. So we are supporting, the young people with more skills and also how to support the refugee children to integrate the Uganda education system. But also we are because we believe in self-reliance, and we believe that's the better solution for the refugees for them to move on their own. Absolutely. So we are trying as much as we can to support them with the ideas in the population where more refugees are doing businesses so that we can bring them together and trying to see where we can pull the resources so that we can support them so that they can move on. So we are in livelihood, and we have also what we call innovation hub. So for us, since the beginning, we believe that we just need to create a space, where refugees can come in and start discussing. So that innovation hub, it's where we gather the refugee communities every month or after 2 months. They come together and we start discussing. And it's a place where also refugees can come and access the information, because we realize that many of them don't have information, and that is a very big problem. So every time when they come together, they discuss they identify challenges and try to come up with a solution. So that's the kind of approach that we're trying to use, because we believe that the refugees are facing problems, but they're also part of the solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, speaking of self-reliance, what are some of the success stories that Yared could possibly share with us?
Okay, thanks so much. What I can say, like from the time we started up to now, we've supported almost 4,000 refugees, and starting from the English classes, because the majority of them come from, these French-speaking countries like Congo, Burundi and stuff. So there is nothing they can do if they don't know the language. So we are supporting them, in that way that, they can move on. We believe, as I say, in self-reliance. So we have so many successful stories. We have, for instance, like there was a lady called, Monica, who left Congo just 1 month after her wedding. The husband was killed. Yes. So she came to Kampala, and I was that time teaching English. So I realized that the woman, all the time that I was teaching, for her, she was busy crying and stuff. So I started approaching her and trying to find out more what is going on. So I realized that she had that big problem, So Monica, we encouraged Monica to finish the English classes, and then later on, she joined our women empowerment project. And after that, we managed to, she was trained in tailoring, and we managed to secure a sewing machine. So right now, Monica is I can say, is one of the happiest woman in Kampala, because she owns a shop in town where she's employing 2 other people. Wow. And doing embroidery stuff and stuff. And she's been supporting one of our cousins to go to school. So we have a number of successful stories like those ones, yeah.
That's amazing. A round of applause for her. Now, of course, Yared plays the role of connector and integrator, and we live in a society or in a world that is, is driven by technology. What are some of the things from private sector, of course, or even philanthropists that Yared has received support?
One, it's very clear that nowadays, with the current refugee crisis around the world, so we can no longer, look at the refugees as a temporary situation. So, because many of them have been in displacement for many years, myself 10 years, I have refugees who have been there for the last 10 years. And with this, it's not something that can be left only to the humanitarian organization like UNHCR. So this is something that needs a well-coordinated response, all the people to come together and to see how they can support the refugees. And also, all the time that we are talking about supporting the refugees, we need also to look at the local population, because this is really, really very important. So in like where I come from, like in Kampala, you see that there are some sectors that rely on the refugees. You look like, when you talk about like this jewelry business in Kampala, there is a big building called Gatherland with 100 of shops. And these shops are owned by the Ugandans, because they're the one who can get capitals. They can import this jewelry from Dubai, from China. But once they bring them in the country, so the refugees play the very big role of, the buyers, but also the distributors. They buy and also move very far, even up to out of the country like Tanzania, Kenya, to sell these. So there is nothing that can be done without the Congolese refugees when it comes to this jewelry business. But also, when you look at where most of these refugees stay, let's say one of the slums in Kampala, because that's where most of the refugees live. Katwe, for instance, is one of them, and it's close to where I work from. Majority of the refugees come from there. It's a it's a place where you find people are all poor. So you find sometimes refugees and the host population, they face the same challenges. Sometimes they cannot afford to send their children to school. They cannot afford to meet their 3 meals per day. And for us who've been working with them, so we realize that it's very important that, we bring them together, because we are talking about integration. Integration, you're looking at it as bringing both refugees and the local population together, where they face the same challenges, you bring them together and you support them. And this has been working very well, and that is why actually we think the private sector can also come in, because one of the big challenges they're facing, like even after training them in skills, now the big problem is the startup. where can they start from? How do we help them from where they are to move to another level? And I think that's when we need to look at and support them so that they can have much capital because, if they need, like, for instance, some money to start their businesses, how do we support them and so that they can move? Yeah.
I think everyone in this room has definitely been challenged in that regard. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you. Now I'm going to move out of the way because now I'm going to pose a question and challenge all my speakers on the floor. Kelly, Diana, Per, Fahad, Robert, can you give us 3 ways in which we can find innovative solutions to build a self-sustaining refugee?
Look and talk with the people that we're serving. I think we need to wrap up, so I'll just leave it with that. Diana, over to you.
No, but as I said, I mean, just challenging the stereotypes and, like Per said also, to realize that we're all the same. We're striving and giving the opportunities that we might have around us for all of us to look, either if we're in a philanthropy or in the corporate sector to be able to support with employment and so on. But I think each and every one has channels to be the catalyst for this.
Absolutely. Her?
Invest in the host countries, create jobs, and lift the economy and reduce the inequality. That's something the private sector can do.
Thank you.
Be ambitious, focus, and don't give up. This is how we be innovative.
Sure.
I think it's first of all about the environment in which people are, because you know what is happening nowadays, like it depends on the policies that we find in every country. I think to provide a very nice environment, but also to invest in the people.
And on that note, thank you, and I'd like to leave you all with a lasting note. We are more similar than we are different, beyond the refugee. Thank you.
Yeah, so